So I want to share with you a passage that shows that there is power in proximity. There is power in proximity. And it comes from both Genesis chapter 40 and chapter 41. And so I just want to show how God allows for us to come into proximity with individuals, no matter your job title, description, where you're at. If you're supposed to align and connect, there is power in proximity. So, this is a passage where Joseph is in prison and he has been assigned to look after Pharaoh's cupbearer as well as the baker. And so, chapter 40, verses 4 says, they remained in prison for quite some time, and the captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, whom looked after him. That's a key word, assigned. They were connected. They were assigned under his mentorship to look after him. It then goes on to say that they both looked pretty grieved to Joseph, and he asked the baker and the cupbearer, what is grieving you? What is on your mind? And they told him that they both had dreams and no one was able to interpret the dreams. So then verse 9 says, so the cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said, in the dream, I saw a grapevine in front of me. It had 3 branches that began to bud and blossom. And then it soon produces a cluster of ripe grapes. I was holding Pharaoh's wine cup in the hand, and I took the cluster and I squeezed the juice into the cup. Then I placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. So then Joseph begins to interpret that in 3 days he will be released from prison and will resume his position. He then goes on to tell him, but when you get out, do not forget about me. Please do not forget about me in here, for I am in here and I have done nothing wrong. So because the cupbearer's report was so well, the chief baker is like, oh, I'm going to have a good interpretation of my dream. So then it also goes on to say, verse 16, the baker said, well, I had a dream too. And in the dream, there were 3 baskets of white pastry stacked on my head. The top of the basket contained all kinds of pastries for Pharaoh's, but then the birds came and ate them from the basket on top of my head. So then Joseph said, okay, for you, that's not good news, because that means that in 3 days, Pharaoh will call you up, but he will behead you. You will be judged and you will be killed. So that is how he interpreted the dreams. So be true, everything came as it was supposed to. Everything came as he interpreted and prophesied the dreams. So it says, chapter 41, verses 1, 2 full years later, right? So the cupbearer forgot about Joseph interpreting the dreams, and it was 2 full years. So it says 2 full years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing on the bank of the Nile. In his dream, he saw 7 fat, healthy cows come out of the river, and they began grazing the marsh grass. Then he saw 7 more cows come up from behind the Nile, but they were scrawny and thin. And so as he's telling them this dream, right, and no one's able to interpret it, then it says the cupbearer was grieved, and he said, today, verse 9, it says, finally the king's cupbearer spoke up. Today I have been reminded of my failure, he told Pharaoh. There's a young Hebrew who interpreted the dream, and verse 13, and everything happened just as he had predicted. I was restored to my position as a cupbearer, and the chef baker was executed and impaled on the pole, just as he stated. So this is where it gets good. This is why there's power in proximity, because if Joseph had not interpreted those dreams in prison and was accurate and really had a relationship with God, he could have listened and said, well, I'm not going to tell them because I know they getting out and I'm not. He could have been bitter and not told them what it meant. But since he had proximity, since he was assigned to them, he had access, he had a relationship with them. And because the cupbearer was restored his position, he had access and he had relationships to the king Pharaoh. And so this is what happens in proximity. It says, chapter 41, verses 39. After Joseph had interpreted Pharaoh's dream, he said, then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God had revealed the meaning of the dreams to you clearly, No one else is as wise as you. You will be in charge of my court, and my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on the throne, will have a rank higher than yours. So God immediately promoted him because of his obedience, because of the proximity of how it all transpired. He was immediately promoted. And so I just want to encourage you, the power in networking, the power of proximity, and the power of obedience. And that is the good news.